Well, us. Oh, look at us. Just like old times, you guys. I feel like I'm back in the pandemic. Oh, man.
That's what I wanted to be.
This sucks.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the DNVR Nuggets Podcast.
Let's go.
Oh, my goodness. It's the week after the parade and the day before the draft. What the hell? That's a real sharp left turn, man, we have to make here. But like professionals, we are going to make it. I'm actually very excited, guys. I'm Adam Matas. Tomorrow we do have our draft show. It starts at 6 o'clock. It runs all night long. It'll be running all the way through the first round, into the second round, and possibly as late as the 40th pick. And then we're going to do, of course, our wrap-up show afterward. So tomorrow, plan a few snacks, grab a few drinks, and settle in with the boys from DNVR as we cover the entire draft.
The fellas.
And speaking of the fellas, I got the fellas with me right now. The man with the wind behind his hat, Harrison Wind.
I was just thinking about this. You know how Calvin Booth does his post-draft presser every year? None of these trades that we're going to talk about are completed yet. So I don't even think he can talk about anybody that the Nuggets might pick tomorrow night.
Man, it's so dumb. Can we got to come up with some kind of way to get around this stupid.
That is going to be the worst press conference of all time.
Pretending they didn't actually trade or make picks or anything.
What is he going to talk about?
Unclear at the moment. Unclear. Also joining the show, though, headphones and all, it's Brendan Vogt.
Hey guys, how we doing? I didn't think of anything today, but I'm happy to be here.
It really is funny seeing the old setups, though. You know, I haven't seen Harrison Wynn's setup. I haven't seen Votes for a while. It really.
Well, I don't really have a setup.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Well, me either, to be honest with you. Sadly.
I don't do shows from here anymore.
I know we don't do it, so why build it? I am excited for today. It's a very content-rich preview of the draft tomorrow. I'm very excited for our draft show. Dev's going to bring us live in studio. Who knows? D-Line Co. Maybe he even phones in from Serbia. Probably not. But who knows?
I hope not.
It would be insane. It'd be an insane thing to do.
It would be pretty awesome of him to do. But today we're going to be talking. Wind has made some top 5 lists for this draft. Top 5 defenders. Top 5 least likely to be Cal guys. Top 5 winners. Yeah. And a few others. They're all going to be fun. We also have some storylines around the NBA, non-Nugget storylines that I think are going to texture tomorrow's draft. I think, I don't want to spoil the segment, I think this year's, the next week, is going to be on the high end in terms of chaos, not the low end. I think it's going to be a one where we see some big names moved and some crazy things pop up that we weren't expecting. So I'm excited for that. But first, everybody, the big story today, the Denver Nuggets made another trade, the second trade in the last 2 weeks. Harrison, why don't you walk us through it?
Well, the Nuggets, they traded into the first round today. They traded they traded their 2024 first rounder that they got 2 weeks ago. And they moved into the first round. They got picks 29, so the second to last pick of the first round, and pick 32.
Right.
That's what they did today.
So they're left with 29, 32, and 37.
That's where
they sit right now.
That's a lot of picks in a row, man. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of stabs at sort of picking up, I would say between picks 29 and 37, there's probably 2 to 3 real players in there. I mean, does that sound fair to you guys that around there, a little bit less than half of those guys are going to hit in some capacity as role players?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So should the Nuggets choose, they might get 3 stabs at that. But I mean, Vogt, I'll start with you. When you saw this trade go through, 3 draft picks in this year's draft, does it sound logical that the Nuggets are going to keep that, or what was your first thought?
First thought was that they might not be done. That it's a good way to restock to move up even further. And I think you're definitely seeing Calvin front load this thing in terms of just, we'll deal with it then. But right now we got to get controllable and affordable contracts in here. But again, I think 3 might be too many on the rookie deal. The 3 rookies, obviously in that range where, of course, at least one of them probably isn't working out. So I do think that this gives them more flexibility should they want to get even higher in the first round. And that's where I went with it right away.
Yeah. What about you, Wind?
Yeah, that was one of my first thoughts too. And my other initial thought was Calvin definitely has a guy or two that he is lasered in on right now. And
Lasered in on.
All right, Woj.
Yeah, good word. We know from the draft last year, from Calvin Booth's first draft as Nuggets GM, that like he will pick out guys and do what he feels needs to be done to get those guys. Like he was going to come out of the last draft with Christian Brown. He was going to come out of that draft with Peyton Watson. Didn't he make a draft night trade or a trade like the day before the draft to move to get the pick that eventually became Peyton Watson?
Correct. Right? I think it was the JaMychal Green trade, right? Ultimately.
Yeah. So that is a very similar move to the one he just made today.
Right.
So I've got to think that he's got a guy or two that he really, really likes. And maybe they can get them at 29 and 32. Maybe they're still going to move up.
So here's the real question. I mean, when we start to game theory this out, because I mean, I joked at the beginning, but it's true, man. All of this is happening so quick that there's less time to really think about all of these things. I mean, obviously, it's no secret to you guys. We've done less research than years previous about the draft and different things. And in part, I'm almost thankful because with all these trades, it's like you're scouting a different part of the draft now, right? But, how many picks do you think is too many to go into next year? Because Peyton Watson to me is already a first-round pick. Like, he was taken last year, red shirt. He's effectively a rookie this next year, even though it won't count as his rookie year. He's effectively a rookie. So you already have one. I think Jack White is a guy that they would probably like to bring in as a 15th guy, the end of bench guy that can be in the pipeline, another guy that you would hope can kind of just move up as the years go on. So maybe he makes a second. If you hold on to Zeke Naji, even though he's been around now for a couple seasons, you're still like, are you counting on him or not? You don't want to have this stockpile of guys. You don't want another Zeke Naji who's just sitting there not really playing minutes. So you've already got a bunch of guys there. How many guys, in your opinion, Vote, would be too many young guys to bring in, not counting those guys I just mentioned?
Well, I do think 3 is the line. I do. Like, I
really?
do. I mean, I don't.
That's a lot.
The line is dramatic, but I mean, I could see them whittling down to one pick they really love, right? And I think that might even be ideal. But so part of it, Wind and I went through this yesterday, but I'm curious, Adam, how many of the veterans do you think would come back, just in terms of roster spots and slots?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I was doing this as well, looking just at the depth chart and thinking, like, where are you at? And there's a lot of spots open for Denver. A lot of guys that they'd have to bring back. I said this earlier on Locked On. They had Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Colin Gillespie. And then Colin, of course, got hurt and took himself out of that mix, and he was a two-way. But you basically had 2 rookies that were on your team, on your main roster. And then you had 2 veterans, Ish Smith and DeAndre Jordan. You played one of the rookies and you sat one of them, and you kind of played both of the vets a little bit, but mostly sat them as backups. I kind of think that equation is going to be the same this year, that they probably are going to bring in Peyton Watson, who they expect to play. You probably bring in a vet that you expect to play. And then everybody else will be like, we'll bring them in, but I don't know. We'll see who wins out those spots.
Right.
So for me, that's why when I look at 3 picks, the only way I can see them using all 3 picks and it making sense is, one, you have a draft and stash, so a guy that naturally is not on the roster next year. And then if you make those 2 picks, you better have a guy that you feel confident is, hey, no, this is a Christian Brown type. Right. And I just don't know if to expect that 2 years in a row that late in the draft to me seems a little unreasonable.
To expect it maybe, but it's definitely, I think, how Calvin works a little bit. Like, I'm with Wind that he's got a guy, I think. And he would do whatever it takes to get. He's very decisive, I think, as a GM.
Yeah. The other thing I thought about with this trade is, I mean, we'll get to the Bruce Brown news and what our read is of that situation. But ideally, you don't want to replace Bruce Brown with a rookie. But you could draft, your Bruce Brown replacement with one of these extra picks too, if he leaves.
I mean, again, your bench at the moment of guys that are locked in, Christian Brown, I feel good about. I think he's going to be very good next year because I think he was solid this year and he's not going to get worse. He's going to get better.
Of course.
I feel great about it. Peyton Watson is the guy to me. Calvin Booth, I know, feels very confident in him. He said that on this very show. He feels very confident in him. He's unproven to me. And I think
next year is all about Peyton Watson. Like that is the entire regular season almost.
And as much as I agree with you, we've done this a handful of times now over the years with players and said, oh, I know what's happening next. Next year, Zeke Naji is going to be everything we've wanted him to be. And the year after, and we've had guys along the way. And I'm just looking at Peyton going, we don't know. And I don't think you can hang your title defense on don't know. I think you can hope for it and you can put yourself in position for him to earn that. But when we start to look at the bench and say, okay, who's for sure back? Outside of Christian Brown, I don't know that there's a solid guy. So saying, yes, we're going to draft a guy and we're going to play Peyton Watson, to me, that's giving Michael Malone two enormous question marks that there's too many things that can go wrong with that big a question mark. So maybe that's the plan. But again, three guys,
I think it's too many.
I would be surprised if more than one of those picks turned into an actual player who had even a prayer of being on the court next year.
Yeah, I think 2 would be the magic number. And look, if you lose Bruce Brown, I think you have to replace him with somebody who's not a rookie.
I agree.
Like you're just pretty thin on the bench as it is. You don't have a lot of money you can toss at guys to come here. But you will need a seasoned veteran Bruce Brown type to replace him if you lose him.
So you also have next year's pick. They still have a pick for next year. They had 2. Now they've got 1. So they have a first rounder next year to trade. They also have, I'd say, Zeke Naji to trade. I don't know that they're going to trade him, but he just seems to be the player that has the most trade value that's under contract. So between all of those things, what's a realistic thing that could happen tomorrow, in your opinion, Harrison? Like you trade 29, 32, and 40, and you move up to 26. Like what is the package of those three? Yeah. How much does that move the needle?
Early 20s, probably best case scenario.
23?
Yeah.
22, 23.
Somewhere in the 21 to 25 range, I would think.
And you can get good value there. If you add a Zeke Naji, I mean, is it possible there's teams out there that value him a little bit more? So now you're talking about 29 and Zeke is it the same thing, 22?
Yeah, I don't think Zeke is moving the needle that much, if we're being honest.
Man, I wonder. I don't know. Would you agree with that vote? You just don't see there.
I wondered if it's Zeke and picks to get up higher, but I'm with Harrison that Zeke is almost in that PJ Dozier tier of maybe in Denver we're seeing the scraps of potential more than the league value is really reflected.
Yeah. The other thing I thought about is if they do have an inclination that Bruce Brown is leaving, then, maybe it's Zeke plus 2 of these picks to get your Bruce Brown replacement.
Sure.
Or Zeke plus 1 of these picks to get your Bruce Brown replacement. A lot of people are tossing out like DeLon Wright's name because the Wizards are having a fire sale.
Yeah.
They're trading everybody. And, he is a poor man's Bruce Brown. So if you could find your Bruce Brown replacement that way, that could be another route if you have an inclination that he's leaving.
Would you be more surprised, Vote, if the Nuggets take all 3 of their picks tomorrow night, or if they made some kind of trade? What would be more surprising to you?
All 3 picks would surprise me. All 3. I think this was a load up to make a better deal.
Yeah.
The funny thing is we said that last season. We said that last draft, and
then they traded in to get another pick.
Yeah, but they also the thing is, like, I think Calvin likes that flexibility. Like he told us, he's not afraid to share. They had to hold me back from trading up for Christian. I wanted him.
Yeah.
So I just do think if he needs to stack stuff together, he will.
I do think one thing that I think is interesting, get Monte back. We all want our old guys back. Um, one, one
Only
thing
the
about-
team felt the same way.
One thing, and I always remember it was actually Stan Van Gundy who said this. It was very smart, but take it with a grain of salt, I suppose. But he said, everybody grades trades as in like what was the value that went out the door and what was the value coming in. I think Calvin is a guy who very clearly doesn't care about that at all. He just cares about, is my team better or worse? And so when I look at that, I do think that there's a world in which he makes a trade tomorrow that we all look at and go, man, that's a lot to give up for that guy or for whatever. And then it's like, yeah, but did it make the Nuggets better? Yes.
Yes.
That's all that matters. They're champions and they're better now. So,
I mean, I think whatever it takes to get another ball handler like that you trust. Like, I think Bruce Brown replacement is ideal, but also, I mean, Bruce Brown is also barely an archetype. Like, I'm not even sure what player he comps to. You know what I mean? So finding the next Bruce is tough, but I do think you need another ball handler. It probably shouldn't just be Colin or Ish or whomever you may draft this year. So that's and I think Wynn might be right that your best bet at getting an impact player in that slot is trading and not trading to move up, but trading to get that player.
Here's another interesting angle on it, Harrison. You might bring in a veteran that competes for the minutes with Peyton Watson. But number one, we know Calvin Booth believes in Peyton Watson more than anybody on earth. I think like that's his guy. So even the idea of bringing in a vet that maybe gives Malone the option to not play Peyton next year and to do this.
Adam, careful.
What? What am I doing?
I mean, you know who Michael Malone's choosing in that
scenario.
scenario.
Oh, of course. This is why I'm saying it's very like Calvin both has to do what he thinks is best for the team, but also like, play to a coach who has a tendency. Right. And by the way, a championship coach who has a tendency.
Of course.
So I'm not trying to take a side on any of this. I'm just trying to present the dilemma. But then there's the secondary part of, would you draft another player that is competing for Peyton Watson or with Peyton Watson? That to me feels equally as strange, right? I mean, it's always clunky when you have two young guys, both of them need to see the floor, both who are fighting for the minutes. You're almost certainly going to cannibalize yourself. Yeah. It almost never works out that both players end up turning out to be great. So I do think that there's a weirdness when we talk about this. They're probably not going to draft a guy who's going to compete with Christian Brown for shooting guard minutes. They're probably not going to draft a guy that's competing with Peyton Watson for small forward minutes. So now we're talking about a point guard. Well, you already have Colin Gillespie. Are you counting on a rookie point guard? That's the hardest of all positions to walk in as a rookie and make championship impact. So are you going big man, power forward, center? It almost feels like we can narrow down like the different options that the Nuggets are looking at and say, okay, I feel like if they're drafting for the next year or two, we know it's going to be a front court player. And it just feels like we can kind of start to check off boxes.
Yeah, for sure. I think the luxury that the Nuggets have is 95% of the league just picks best player available. Yeah. But like the Nuggets, they have so many pieces and established pieces that they can be a little greedy and look for the guy that's going to fit the best, not only just around the starters, but that's going to fit well next to Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. Like, I think that should actually be a thought that the Nuggets have in this draft. Like, we need a 4-man and a 1 that will complement Christian Brown and Peyton Watson.
I think that's one of the arguments for drafting a ball handler isn't, okay, they're going to come in and run any unit, in this next season. First of all, the Jamal Stagger, take your drink, is probably going to be featured heavily anyway. But just another ball handler on the roster as insurance would be nice. But at some point, rather than having to make these front-loaded deals to keep replacing the ball handler slot, maybe you can draft a guy that you trust to develop over time. And that's your longer term answer. In a way, Bones was once viewed. Of course, it did not work out that way.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. There's more to break down, including Bruce Brown, the latest on Bruce Brown, or what does this all mean for Bruce Brown? We'll talk about that on the other side, as well as start looking at some prospects. I know you guys did yesterday. We'll look at some more prospects as we get ready for tomorrow's NBA draft.
Kind Love, one of the first dispensaries in Colorado. Kind Love was established in 2010, known for cultivating some of the highest quality cannabis in the state. Kind Love, farm to table. Yes, Kind Love is farm to table, fully integrated, seed to sale. They breed their own genetics, control the grow process and packaging. they're the best dispensary in Denver. So make sure to check out Kind Love. Visit one of their stores in Cherry Creek or North Denver. Mention DNVR and receive the DNVR exclusive discount, which is 25% off all Kind Love flour, pre-rolls, and their turbo joint line. Visit their website as well, kindlove.com, for their full menu and online ordering. But again, you can stop into one of their stores, Cherry Creek or North Denver, mention DNVR, get the exclusive DNVR discount. That's 25% off all Kind Love flour, pre-rolls, and their turbo joint line. At DraftKings Sportsbook this week, guys. No NBA, no NHL, obviously. But you can still download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use code DNVR. Bet just $5 to score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code DNVR, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. They've got a lot of props up for the draft. You can bet on like the order of the top 3 picks. You can bet on this guy to get drafted ahead of this guy. So make sure to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code DNVR. Tons of props to bet on with the NBA draft, baseball, tons of other sports as well. Code DNVR only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. Or visit thegamblinghelpline.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. In West Virginia, gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. All games regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly in partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown. Races in Connecticut. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-78-N-897-777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets require or expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10-plus leg required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings or at sportsbook.draftkings.com/baseball terms.
All right, there we go. Back here, DNVR Nuggets Podcast segment 2. Don't forget our draft show starts tomorrow at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. It's going to be a banger. Settle in. You should watch it with us. Let's talk about Bruce now, who elected to opt out of his player option. No surprise. He could still re-sign with the Denver Nuggets for even slightly more than if he would have just picked up his player option. So that's still on the table. But the thing that stood out to me, fellas, Woj, the way he phrases tweets is always interesting to me. Not always what he says, but how he phrases them. Because number one, you could usually tell who it comes from, right? It'll a lot of times be like, Paul George has decided to pick up his player option. Paul George, right. An impressive player by all accounts. Very impressive guy. So in this one, he says the Nuggets are preparing for the possibility of Bruce Brown leaving. It almost made me think, I wonder, could be something, could be nothing. But what do we make of this news vote that Bruce Brown is opting out? And then no sooner does that get announced, but we get a trade.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I do think, you obviously have to prepare for Bruce leaving if you're Denver. First and foremost, you have to have contingency plans in place, especially after the Jeremy Grant thing, by the way. Like, you could have some sort of understanding of an understanding that does not shake out that way once it comes time to pay up or whatever. So I do think Denver has to prepare for him leaving. I do think him staying is on the table. I couldn't give you a percentage. You guys know I'm bad at odds, but it's on the table. And I think, Wynn hit the nail on the head with there's limited teams that have cap space. Maybe Indiana is the team to watch. And I think Bruce is going to just see if those teams can really pay up, if it's not Detroit and Houston. And there might be a chance that coming back to Denver on that new deal is his best bet.
Wind.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise that he opted out. Yeah, I mean, Bruce is just going to have to decide, like, does he want the money now or does he maybe want the money later? And, I feel like that deal is probably out there. Yeah, yeah, he's just got to decide if he wants to leave the Nuggets or not. I mean, I think it'd be the right decision for him to take the deal. Like, you can't be mad at him for it, but it'd be great if he comes back.
It's weird how the order of operations happens. You know, the draft is going to happen tomorrow before you have anything. I know these guys talk, right?
Yeah, yet everybody already knows what everybody's doing.
So, so who knows? But I will say, if you brought back Bruce, if you knew he was coming back and you have Christian there, I feel like you could get a little bit more fast and loose with the draft picks. Like, that's where you can really start to prepare yourself for the upcoming years, care even less about this year, and just say, we're going to draft a couple guys that we think are going to help us with the 3-peat and the 4-peat. And this repeat, this next year, is already taken care of. We might have to go sign one more vet or something, but you're mostly there. So that part of it, if I knew for certain Bruce was coming back, I do think that there's more of a chance that Calvin takes 3 guys next year and says, hey, we're going to try to keep the pipeline full of guys that can help us in the coming years. Maybe that's the strategy to begin with. Let's get into it, though. We have a couple top 5 lists that you put together for us, Harrison, as you've begun your draft analysis. I've watched about 5 guys.
Keyword, begun.
Begun. Well, you got 24 hours. Brush up, baby. So let's take a look. First of all, Calvin has said repeatedly that he likes winners, right? Christian Brown. This is a guy that won a high school championship, college championship, and then, of course, an NBA championship. Calvin loved that about him. He's talked about guys who have won. So let's start with the top 5 winners, Harrison.
The top 5 winners. Well, we've got 2 national championship winners from this last year on this list. Jordan Hawkins, Andre Jackson Jr., both from UConn. We've got...
Why is this in order? Because I can't tell with the graphic. Is Jordan Hawkins your number 1 winner?
I mean, he's just the highest rated guy. So that's just the order it's in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Where's he projected?
I don't know.
Jordan Hawkins.
Late teens.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is just non-lottery guys, too. I didn't really look at any lottery guys. This is all after the lottery. But, yeah, Jordan Hawkins, Andre Jackson Jr., both from UConn. Jaime Hawkins Jr., a guy who's been on a lot of good UCLA teams and won a lot of games. Colby Jones.
Teammate.
Yeah, Peyton Watson's old teammate. Colby Jones coming off an NIT championship.
Let's go.
And Jalen Wilson, Christian Brown's teammate at Kansas during last year's national
we know who
championship.
wins once.
Well, also AJ Hafley, big fan of Jalen Wilson, the homie AJ Hafley from our Avs beat. He tells me he's just sitting there. He's available.
Let's hasn't started yet.
Let's start with Jordan Hawkins here. Just give me a quick rundown of what kind of player he is.
Shooter, scorer. He's got a great 3-point shot. Offensive guy. I think he's like 6'5", 6'6".
Okay.
But I don't think he's a likely target. Just because he's more offense, but that's him.
Now, Jaime Jaquez is my guy. I got to be honest here. There's two things about him. Actually, I'll just start here. It's a fellow light-skinned Latino American.
I knew that was number 1.
You guys know I have to go with it. His game, very reminiscent of a young Adam Mares. Very, very awkward. Is very unattractive to watch it. Somehow cooks guys in slow motion with this weird, like, nothing ever looks good. Like, I'm watching the profiles on him, and it's like, oh, crazy ISO score. Every move is disgusting.
Yeah.
He wears that headband. You guys don't know this, but I used to wear a headband in high school.
I need a picture of that.
I probably have one or two I could cook up. Because of former UCLA legend, Jason Capono. So, Jaime Jaquez, the Adam Mares of this draft, which is why I think stay away.
Man, Adam, what you think is unorthodox and not smooth, I think is just I look at it as a high IQ player who just knows his own game.
It is true. This is true. But in all sincerity, Harrison, like, he's 6'7". He's not, he doesn't seem to be very athletic. He's just so tall. very skilled.
Yeah, he's tall. He's tall, skilled, high IQ. Jonathan Gavoni on ESPN called him the highest IQ player in the draft when he was handing out his draft superlatives.
Okay.
And I mean, he's a projected late first, but he did get a green room invite, so they think he's going, somewhere in the first round.
Okay. Have you had a chance to check him out?
Well, I'm vague. He's one of the guys that I'm actually have seen before, and he just strikes me as well, it's no surprise because he's in the winners group here, but he plays very hard. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's just one of those guys that in a kind of Brett Brown way, in a kind of Christian-esque way. It's like, okay, what's the skill? But it's like, it's more of, there's not a play that he's not involved in or doesn't give up on. And so that's high work rate, high effort guy.
Who's the Harrison Wind of the draft?
That's a good
Matt
question.
Ryan.
We're gonna have to all find our own personal comp.
He's probably on the top 5 least likely to be Cal guys list.
Jaime's an interesting one. I mean, he does remind me maybe in part of a Joe Ingles. You think about point guard. He's not really a point guard. He's more of a point forward. Would that work for Denver? Again, high IQ. He can shoot a little bit. His shot looks good, so I think it can improve. Let's move on to some of the other guys. Andre Jackson Jr., guys. This year's Jaden Springer. This is the guy that Nuggets fans all unanimously across the board.
No, he's not Jaden Springer. He's Brandon Clark of a couple years ago.
Okay, Brandon, come on. Okay, you got the
he is the guy who draft Twitter is just head over heels for.
But Nuggets fans in particular, again, these are the high IQ guys. A lot of the guys on this list.
Yeah.
His offense is disgusting. His numbers are unimpressive. What can you tell us about him, though?
Strong lead.
Well, I mean, some people might think his numbers are impressive, but the guy was flirting with triple doubles, throughout the tournament and throughout his season at UConn. So he does everything. He just is a winner and contributes to winning plays. He just makes winning plays. That being said, the downside of him is he's just not a threat. Individually, and it's how many of those guys can you really have on the floor?
Someone needs to score eventually for that bench.
Do you like him at all, Vote?
I mean, sure, yeah. Wynn's line was he's a Denver Nugget. I mean, he's one of those guys that you could see playing the right way, 10 minutes or whatever a night, or if not a night, but when he gets them, with the Denver Nuggets, they could get a lot out of him, right?
Yeah.
Smart guy, a kind of guy that would do well around Jokic. Not that he would play right away necessarily, but I am a little. There is a part of me that wonders, when does this pipeline include scorers for the bench? And I thought moving on from Bones was wise, but there's eventually, I think you're just going to want some guys that can provide some pop.
Yes or no? Because
I don't know if it's now, by the way.
I would have been right there with you, Vote. I'm saying 2 months ago, I'm with you. What are we doing here? Then you get to the playoffs, and you're like, they're fine. They just need guys that can defend it.
I know, but also the recipe for surviving that in the regular season was we'll play Jamal 95 minutes a night.
That is true.
He'll be fine. Just so I don't know if that time is now, by the way, but I do think that notion sort of hangs over the roster.
Somebody just said Andre Jackson reminds me of Lonzo Ball. Of course, my guy, Lonzo. The difference is Lonzo's shot looked equally as disgusting, but it always went in. That was one of the main differences. Colby Jones, we got to keep moving and go through a lot of guys here. Tell me about him real quick.
Colby Jones is Bruce Brown. He's a taller Bruce Brown, but less athletic. So I actually he could be your long-term Bruce Brown replacement. 6'6", big guard. He can handle the ball. He can set people up. Not a ton of individual creation, but another high IQ guy. And then
real quick,
Wilson,
he's mocked in the early first round, so he 32 or 40 he might be available there. That's a guy there.
Yeah, early second round. And then Jalen Wilson, Christian Brown's teammate at Kansas, he was Kansas's best player last year. Scored a bunch, rebounded a bunch, assisted a bunch, filled up the box score. Has played a ton of minutes, a ton of games for Kansas, but I think people are just worried about what is he really good at that's going to shine at the NBA level.
Okay. All right. Do you have a take on either of those two guys? Just yeah, I didn't mean either. Let's move on though to our next list here. We know Cal likes winners. He also likes defense. So we got to go top 5 defenders. Wind, walk us through this list.
Top 5 defenders. So Cason Wallace is regarded by a lot of people as the best on-ball defender in the draft. He's a 6'4" guard from Kentucky, one-and-done guy. But, you know, he's long, 6'8" and a half wingspan, pesky, active defender. A guy that I actually think would fit kind of well, like with what the Nuggets like out of their defenders.
Okay. Interesting. Do you have any takes on him here? Vote.
No, I really don't.
Where's
he
projected? He's about 18. Gavoni has him 18. So this one would be a reach anyway, it seems.
This would be a trade up, probably.
Trade up. Okay. Next guy on the list.
Next guy, Ryan Rupert. My notes on him: bad player, but 6'6", 7'3" wingspan. Everybody's excited about this guy and his potential. Apparently, he's a good defender now. He's French, but he played in Australia last season. I watched one highlight of him. He airballed 2 threes.
Sick. Dude.
He is Peyton Watson, but worse than Peyton Watson was as a freshman at UCLA.
So he's a guy who played down in New Zealand. This is my least favorite. I have not watched a single second of this guy, but it's my least favorite thing you could say about him.
You can probably just
imagine. I can just imagine all the physical tools. He should be great. He just can't do anything. Those are always a worrisome one to me, but sometimes those guys pan out. All right. What else we got? Omax.
Yeah. Well, Rupert's also 19. Omax. We talked about this guy yesterday. He reminds me of Jeremy Grant. Really just tenacious, long, active defender, lob threat. He's a guy who you could slot it at the 4, kind of in that Aaron Gordon role on both ends of the floor, I think.
He seems to me the highlights I was watching are the Spinella's video, Spinella's breakdowns. Adam Spinella always has the best breakdowns. He looked to me like an elite defender. Some of the stuff I'm watching of him, I'm like, man, this guy looks remember Tari Eason last year, how much it stood out, how he could just disrupt everything. That's kind of how Omax reminded me. Skinnier frame, but just swarming.
Yeah, absolutely swarming. Yeah, that's a good word to describe him. And then Andre Jackson on here.
Our guy again. Okay, so Cal likes winners. He likes defenders. We're 2 for 2 with our guy, Andre Jackson.
And then the last guy I got in here, Jordan Walsh, who's projected second rounder, but 3-and-D, one-and-done guy from Arkansas, 6'7" with a 7'2" wingspan, and just a really active defender as well.
Out of Arkansas, our guy Scott Hastings would approve. Interesting one. That's a guy projected by Gavoni to go somewhere around 40. So that would be the 40th pick type guy. Maybe that's a guy that they take as a long-term development. Could be an interesting one. So there are some names for you. Let's take a break. On the other side, we got more lists to get to, including top 5 ready now.
Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. Make sure to check out the Mountain Beach Sour from Breck Brew. The perfect beer for the summer. If you're chilling on your patio, chilling at the park, the Mountain Beach Sour from Breck Brew is the perfect beer to have on hand. If you don't know where to get Breck Brew, check out the Breck Brew beer locator, breckbrew.com. Just type in your zip code. That tells you where you can find Breckenridge Brewery beer near you. But make sure to check out the Mountain Beach Sour. Make sure you got some on deck for the draft tomorrow. We are going live 6 p.m. Mountain Time. When the draft starts, we'll be live all night, so make sure you got some Mountain Beach Sours with you as well. Also, make sure to check out the good folks over at Ivy Nutrition of Wash Park. They're awesome at what they do. We've all been into Ivy Nutrition. We all had great experiences there. They're super professional. They take care of you. Stop by their Wash Park location on the corner of Alameda and Downing. Anybody who mentions DNVR when you come in gets 50% off your first IV nutritional drip. Call them today, 720-259-4404 for more information. Again, stop by their Wash Park location, corner of Alameda and Downing. Anybody who mentions DNVR when they come in gets 50% off their first IV nutritional drip.
Alrighty, back here, segment 3, DNVR Nuggets Podcast. And now it's time to look at the next top 5. Top 5 ready right now, a la Christian Braun last year. What do we got, Wind?
Let's start with Chris Murray, the brother of Keegan Murray, who looks just like Keegan Murray and kind of plays like him too. I feel like he's got the highest floor out of a lot of guys in kind of the mid-first round, late first round range, just a really steady game.
My favorite thing is Gavoni right now mocks him to Sacramento. There's no way that's going to happen, right? I mean, come on. But it's at 24, so you're talking about Denver not too far off, a little bit there. He's old, so is that part of why you think he's ready now?
Yeah. I think most of the guys on this ready now list are older, like 22, 23 years old.
You got a Chris Murray take?
No, just a question. I know you said steady game, but what's the number one sell? Yeah.
It's all around. Like, he's pretty good at everything. I don't think he's elite at anything, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. From Cedar Rapids, Iowa. All right. Who else we got on the list?
We got a couple guys we already talked about. Jaquez.
Let's go, Jaime. All right. Two for 3.
He's played in a lot of big games, played in a lot of big moments.
Ready to go, baby. Oh, wait, in all seriousness, though, Jaime, does he play next year? If he comes to Denver, does he play?
Is Jeff Green back or not?
That means no. Okay.
We got Andre Jackson on this list now, too. Another upperclassman who's played in a ton of games.
3 for 3, man. 3 for 3 with Andre Jackson so far.
We know who Wynn's guy is, by the way.
Yeah.
It's identified.
Trace Jackson Davis.
Okay.
23 years old, 4-year player at Indiana, started every game, I think, or mostly every game throughout his entire 4-year career. But one of the more experienced bigs in this draft. And I don't think there's many. So if you want a big man who might be ready now, Trace Jackson Davis is somebody you should look at.
4 assists a game this last year. Pretty high for a center. Not at Jokic numbers, but that 4 assists is well above average.
Yeah. He's a good passer.
I really like the idea of a playable big sooner rather than later. A lot of the options, by the way, are like at the moment are guys you like for their vibes and all that. But I do think, in the regular season, they did not want to go to Aaron Gordon in that rotation with the second unit. I think probably to save it, but B, to save him, preserve him. And so at some point, you just like the point guard, I think you do need some bigs that you can play and trust a little.
Yeah. What I don't like about Trace Jackson Davis is he's only 6'9".
And 6'9", and he did not attempt a 3 in college.
Yeah.
So interior player at 6'9", that can be tough, man. That can be really tough.
Yeah. It's not so.
And then you had Colby Jones on there as well, so he makes a second appearance. All right. Now to change things up a little bit. So we have Cal guys. I do not think Calvin Booth would draft Bol if Bol was in this draft. I don't think he would take Bones Highland. I don't even think he would take Michael Porter Jr., a guy, like Calvin seems to be a guy that doesn't care for upside. He's looking at this era as, nope, we just need these role player guys that cover these traits. So give me the top 5 guys least likely to be taken by Cal so we can kind of wipe them off of our boards.
Okay, number 1, and again, this is just highest projection to lowest projection. Keontae George out of Baylor, who is just a inefficient, score first, undersized 2-guard.
Is this just hoopers? Is this a list of hoopers?
Hoopers. This is a little bit hoopers, yeah.
But he's a projected first rounder.
Okay.
Next up, a guy I actually love, Jet Howard. Great name. Maybe more of a Tim Connolly pick. But this guy's got a gorgeous jumper, but is a terrible defender.
Okay, but he's a
All right,
shooter. Is he a shooter? Is that his
He's
thing?
like a 6'7", 6'8" flamethrower shooter from Michigan.
Flamethrower. Okay. Chet is such a great. You're right. That's a great first name. All right, throw him out.
Dariq Whitehead, he's had 2 foot surgeries, since his college season started. I just think the injury risk to take a guy like that in the first round is a little much.
Okay. Where's he projected?
Middle first round, I think.
Oh, so it's
20s.
way up there. Oh, well, I think Gavoni has him 30, so you're right.
Okay.
Maybe the foot injury on a tall guy, always a little scary. Okay.
Maxwell Lewis, he is out of Pepperdine. He played on a bad team, so not a winner, and streaky offensive player.
What do you mean streaky? Because he's projected 28, which is right there in the range.
Yeah. I think streaky shooter, questions about his defense.
Played at Pepperdine, which is like smaller school. Yeah. Not really a program, it's not like a history there.
Yeah.
Again,
not a winner. Not a winner.
Not a winner. Okay.
And then the last guy I put on here is James Najee. And the reason I put James Najee on here is because he is 18 years old and probably a draft and stash guy, a center who's really raw and needs to develop. And I put him on here because they already have one of those guys developing in Europe.
So a whole new Kamagate 2.0.
Right.
Okay. I like it. I find it interesting that because I see a bunch of people. It's funny, man, how many people in the comments when we got to this part got upset. Like, come on,
get upset at?
But to be fair, vote Peyton Watson, Christian Brown last year, not on people's radar. I mean, outside of you, of course, but not on most people's radar because they're not the sexy guy you get that excited for in a draft.
Yeah, and again, I don't think Wynn's list there was bad players.
Right.
It was just guys that not Calvin guys,
Yeah.
So, yes, I do think it's very clear that part of Calvin's larger philosophy at this point includes higher floor, steadier dudes, fit physical archetypes, because that's the beauty of the Tim era. They hit on so many of the more roll the dice moves. You just don't need to anymore. And I think Calvin has a firm understanding of that.
Oh. All right. That's an interesting list. All right, let's take our final break. On the other side, we'll step outside of the Nuggets for just a second because tomorrow might be a wild day in the association. And Wynn also put together another top 5 list. Guys that might be shaking up the story tomorrow.
If we talk about Dame, it's actually the only reason I came on the show. I can't wait to talk about it.
Take on the sun with gear built to last. Check out Shady Rays. Our friends at Shady Rays, they got you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Just go to the Shady Rays website, scroll their website. They got tons of different styles, no matter what kind of sunglasses you like to wear. I bet they got a style for you. They got a lot of styles that look exactly like some of the bigger brands or some of the more expensive brands, I should say, that you might have been buying over the years. But go to shadyrays.com, use the code DNVR, 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by 250,000 people. Go to shadyrays.com, use the code DNVR for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses rated 5 stars by 250,000 people.
All righty, back here. Final segment here as we get ready for the draft tomorrow, the NBA draft, which will take place exactly one day after the parade and roughly 3 days after Michael Malone got his Maxi Minor tattoo. An all-time moment from him. He's planning on being the coach for 20 years. Let's get into it, though. I have a feeling it's funny. We did this last week where we looked at around the association. Yes. When we looked at the NBA and we're like, who are the contenders? And honestly, no team looked like they were ready to beat Denver. Like every team looked like they were more than one move away. Now, the first one's already happened with Bradley Beal going to Phoenix, so that changes some things. But I think that we're not the only ones feeling this way. I think a lot of GMs are looking around going, time to turn, time to make a pivot, man. Time to sprinkle some to try to mix a mix up here. And I think there's going to be, I don't know if it's all coming tomorrow. What do you think, Vote? Do you think tomorrow will be the day all these things happen, or do you think it'll be more free agency?
I think things get started tomorrow. Yeah, it does sound like teams are willing to move on from draft picks right now. And I do think there are teams that probably want to have some understanding of where they've landed on the larger picture questions before they get into free agency. So I would not rule that out, man. I think we could see some big names move tomorrow.
So with that in mind, Wind, top 5 tradable guys.
Number 1.
Uh-oh.
It's Damian Lillard.
Oh no!
No, you didn't hear. You didn't hear, Harrison. They're not.
Wait. What's the latest report?
They're not taking any calls.
They're not taking calls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Phones are shut off inside the Portland Trailblazers front office, straight to voicemail.
Dude,
straight to Chris Haynes.
What are the what are the odds that Dame pulls a Ty Lawson tomorrow? And if they use the pick, he's like live smoking hookah, like forcing his way out. I think
I'm going to Miami, bro.
Yeah, I'm good in Miami. But in all sincerity, look, man, we're laughing, but Lillard's a good player, and right now he's on a team that has no shot of beating the Nuggets. No matter what they do this offseason, it doesn't seem like they're going to be in position. But if he gets traded to another team, he could tilt the balance of power, especially if it's out west, but anywhere. So it would be a big thing, even though it's annoying, and I'm with you, Vote. It still would be a big deal if he got traded in terms of the championship odds next year.
It's the right answer at number 1. Wind is right. And it's a big – I actually disagree with you. I think the East is where he could shake things up the most.
Yeah.
But
I just mean for Denver. Like, if he gets traded to Miami, I'm not going to be sitting here going like, okay, how does Denver match up? I'd be like, you know what?
With it in June. I'm with you.
We'll deal with it in June.
I'm with you. So,
all right.
Yeah, out west, I don't think that the thing is Dame on those Portland teams was rarely, if ever, enough by himself. But I think we'd be looking at a very different situation and a different equation. And I do fear the way he scores with these.
Yeah. Okay. Next on your list.
Next on my list, DeAndre Ayton.
Okay.
Who I think could definitely get traded tomorrow.
Yeah.
Although one of the rumored spots was Boston, right? And they made a trade today for another big.
Kristaps
Porzingis, which is hilarious. I think Bill Simmons listens to the show, you guys. I think he listens to the show every day. He's a huge Jokic fan. He steals all of our takes. We know this. Come on, Bill. But here's the thing he said yesterday that I absolutely loved, and I loved it because it's something we've been saying on this show. Ayton has his issues, but doesn't he feel like the guy that everybody blames a little too much? Doesn't he feel like he's blamed like 40% more than what he deserves for everything?
Oh, he's the Michael Porter Jr. of the Suns without the vindication tour. Yeah.
100%, where it's like always like, hey, we're undervaluing. And meanwhile, he's like, I don't know. We went to the finals with me, you guys.
I feel like I'm pretty good.
I feel like I'm okay. I'm sorry I got cooked by Jokic. So does everyone. I do feel like Ayton might be – I'm almost rooting for a trade. First of all, are they going to trade for another big? Or are they just going to punt on bigs? And then second of all, I'm rooting for them to trade him to somewhere like Indiana, and then he's just awesome. And they're like, ah, damn it. That would be my brightest timeline.
Yeah, well, it seemed like the biggest reason he was going to get traded was because the coach hated him and the starting point guard hated him.
Oh, that's a good
But
point.
now both those guys are gone.
Ooh.
So I wonder if there could be maybe a little rallying around DeAndre Ayton from the rest of whoever's left of the Phoenix Suns in the wake of his two, biggest enemies leaving.
They're texting him right now. We need you with us, big fella. We need you this year.
Yeah. Mikal Bridges also, by the way, talked a lot of trash about him publicly. So, and he's also gone. So maybe he's finally at home.
Maybe he really just does suck.
All right, Zion.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like. They're not going to get a better center, for him, right? The idea is they get a couple depth pieces.
I agree with that.
All right, and then you've got Zion, which is just huge, man. I mean, this one, what a crazy couple months it's been for Zion. But here's the thing: he's a great player. Another guy I just don't count on because I think there's something with him that physically and also this or that. But Zion gets moved, man. Especially if it goes to any type of team that's in position to contend. I mean, he's a load. Also, what does it mean for the Pelicans? Like, are they some of these rumors about trading him for the number 2 pick? Well, the Pelicans giving up on this era? They were so close.
They were so close? Close to what? The play-in?
And part of the reason
They were
why
the number one seed in December until Denver overtook them. They were a good team that collapsed because.
But why did they collapse? Part of it
Because
is
of
that
Zion.
Zion doesn't play any
Now
games.
we're talking about the regular season in December. Okay.
Oh my god!
Hey, we're regular season truthers
Nobody's
on this
gone more
show.
smug than Harrison.
Yeah, I know, it's unbelievable. I don't. Zion is a guy that I would be terrified to trade for. Obviously, everyone knows the flyer that you're taking, but I would assume it's a big deal. I would assume it's not a Bradley Beal return, and I would be a little afraid to hand out multiple firsts for a guy. Sometimes physically, things are just too good to be true, and I'm honestly not surprised that Zion has struggled to stay on the floor.
My first reaction to that rumor was I would do that trade if I was New Orleans. I would trade him for the second pick right now if I could.
It was my hottest take last summer.
Or
that
third
I was
pick.
like, if I were me, man, that team has some pieces, and you can't keep messing around with people you don't know if they're in or out. And there was rumors about him wanting to leave and everything last year. I was like, get him going. It's crazy to say because he's so freaking talented. These next two guys are the most interesting on the list, though, Wind, to me.
Chris Paul. There's no way he's staying in Washington. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. And he definitely wants to wind up with one of the LA teams. The Clippers just made a trade today where they got Malcolm Brogdon. So I don't know if they're going to be in the Chris Paul sweepstakes. So maybe he's bound for the Lakers. I don't know.
I think he's going to the Lakers. That would be my guess. And they're going to form the lamest team in the history of teams. And
Is that a buyout? Is that a buyout? Like what? How does that happen?
I think it's a buyout and minimum. Yeah.
And then Paul George is an interesting one because I look at this Clippers team and I just go, sometimes it doesn't work out. And there's various reasons for it. But this Clippers team to me is like, if I were them, I would be looking forward and then towards the future. And Paul George, to me, I've long said, one of the most underrated players in the game. Mentally, I don't know that he could be the number one. But if you're talking number twos, I just think he's an unbelievable fit on almost every team. He plays defense. He shoots the three. He plays off ball. He plays on ball.
Dude, Ishbia is trying to figure out right now if there's any fucking chance.
So why did you put him on the list? I haven't seen any rumors.
There was a rumor yesterday that I think from Mark Stein that the Clippers are thinking about, potentially, maybe, possibly taking a call about breaking up Paul George.
They should.
They really should. They really should. I mean, I don't want to be that guy with the Nuggets. You can't watch.
Be that guy. Just be that guy, man.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, that organization can't look and be like, you know what? I know we've never matched up in the regular season very well, and I know they smacked us back in the bubble when they were the puppy version of this. But I think next year we're going to all come together. Like, no way, man. They have to be looking at it and going, we don't have the horses for that fight. And what do we do now? You have to – this is like the last moment to pivot for them, in my opinion.
Totally. Also, you shipped out so much for Paul George that if at this point in the timeline you could turn him into a piece you're confident about in the future, you might have to do that or feel better about doing that. Because if you stick with these guys and you whiff, which, by the way, you're going to whiff, I mean, that SGA trade is maybe number one all time.
Nah, I can't give it that. But it is
I mean, that's a bit much. I'm getting carried away. But it's
worked out because I still think it's a good trade. It's a
trade you make 10 times out of 10.
You just rolled snake eyes, man. It's like you get a free roll and you somehow lost money on the free roll. So,
but I'm saying if that is a potential outcome on the horizon, you do have to think about pivoting while you still can.
Yeah. What's crazy is there's maybe even more deals. Pascal Siakam. There's whatever's going on in Houston. There's just a lot of teams that Draymond Green. Obviously rumors start to float about with him. I just feel like there's going to be a little bit of chaos going on in this draft. And
totally,
I'm very curious to see another year like Calvin. It's funny, the front office, there's only like 3 or 4 days of the year that matter. Right. And so with Calvin, this is, I think, the 3rd or 4th day of his year-long tenure that actually matters. And I'm just so curious to see how he navigates it all. Clearly seems to have a plan in place by making these early moves. And I'm just so excited to be more of a passenger in this whole thing than usual. Usually I'll try and to predict and go through. Tomorrow we'll feel a little bit like let's see what happens. Let's see what this new look Nuggets team looks like and go from there. Any final thoughts, Vogt?
What do you guys think about Porzingis to Boston? Are they better or worse?
I can't care about them, man. I just can't.
Yeah, you know what? That's the right answer. Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
I'll say this.
really
I think
cares?
it makes them more like themselves. It just makes them more.
I'm in.
Celtics.
I'll
I'm
say
in.
this: if I'm trying to win a championship, it's not with Kristaps Porzingis. That's my take on it.
Oh man,
He's not the missing piece. I'll tell you that.
You just talked me into a long, fun summer, dude.
Oh my gosh. All right, that does it for today's show, guys. Tomorrow, 6:00, we're going to be right there at our Studio A, covering the draft. We'll be in our seats for a very, very, very long time. I'm looking forward to all of it. The Nuggets, I'm still celebrating, by the way. Tomorrow's just a break. I'm taking a timeout tomorrow to do the draft. Then I'm going right back to celebrating the championship. Adam Silver's not going to speed up my celebration period. I'm still in a period of celebration. But tomorrow it will be fun to see the first steps in what will inevitably be the 2024 Denver Nuggets championship run. We'll share it all with you guys. Hit that like button for us on the way out.